this episode, we focus on the bridge between a well-designed strategy and the everyday reality of work getting done. Many security programs fail in the space between those two, not because the strategy is wrong, but because execution is vague, ownership is unclear, and progress is not reviewed with discipline. Operationalizing strategy means turning intentions into repeatable action, so people know who is responsible, what happens next, and how the organization will know whether it is succeeding. Owners, milestones, and reviews are the three anchors that keep strategy from drifting. Owners create accountability, milestones create momentum and clarity, and reviews create learning and adjustment. For beginners, it helps to see that operationalization is not a separate technical phase. It is governance in its most practical form, because governance is about making decisions real and sustainable. If you can consistently turn strategy into action with these anchors, the program becomes predictable, measurable, and easier to support over time. Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is a companion to our course companion books. The first book is about the exam and provides detailed information on how to pass it best. The second book is a Kindle-only ebook that contains 1,000 flashcards that can be used on your mobile device or Kindle. Check them both out at cyber.author.me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. Owners are the first anchor because work does not happen reliably when responsibility is shared in vague ways. An owner is a person or role that is accountable for an outcome, not just for attending meetings or forwarding messages. Accountability means that when something is unclear, the owner helps clarify it, and when something is blocked, the owner helps remove the block or escalates it properly. This does not mean the owner does every task personally, but it does mean the owner is responsible for making sure the tasks are completed and the outcome is achieved. Many beginners assume that if a policy exists, everyone owns it, but in practice, shared ownership often means no ownership. Operationalizing strategy therefore requires naming owners for each initiative and for each ongoing control, such as access reviews, incident response routines, recovery testing, or vendor oversight. Ownership also includes defining who approves exceptions, who maintains documentation, and who ensures communication reaches the right people. When ownership is clear, confusion drops, work moves faster, and people stop guessing about who should decide. A useful way to define ownership is to focus on decision rights and responsibilities, because these are what shape real behavior. Decision rights answer questions like who can approve privileged access, who can accept a risk exception, who can declare an incident, and who can authorize a recovery action that affects operations. Responsibilities include tasks like maintaining a process, ensuring training occurs, coordinating stakeholders, and tracking metrics. When decision rights are unclear, organizations either stall or move forward informally, and informal decisions are hard to audit and hard to improve. When responsibilities are unclear, tasks fall through the cracks, and the program becomes inconsistent. Operationalizing strategy means making these rights and responsibilities explicit in a way that teams can actually use. Beginners should remember that clarity reduces both risk and friction because it prevents delays and prevents silent workarounds. Clear ownership is therefore both a governance necessity and an adoption accelerator. Milestones are the second anchor because they convert a large initiative into a sequence of achievable steps that can be planned and tracked. Without milestones, programs tend to drift into long, ambiguous projects that feel endless, which damages morale and reduces executive confidence. Milestones create visible progress by defining intermediate outcomes, such as completing a pilot, establishing a baseline, rolling out to a first group of critical systems, or finalizing a review cadence. Milestones should be tied to outcomes rather than to busy work, meaning they represent something that changes the organization's capability, not just a document that was written. For example, a milestone for recovery readiness might be that a restore test for a critical service succeeded within the target time, not merely that a recovery plan was drafted. Milestones also help manage dependencies because you can sequence steps so foundational tasks happen before higher-level tasks. For beginners, milestones are a way to keep strategy from becoming overwhelming, because each milestone answers what done looks like for the next slice of work. Milestones also help operationalize communication, because each milestone is a natural point to update stakeholders and reinforce adoption. If teams do not know what is changing and when, they will experience updates as surprises, and surprises create friction. By aligning communication to milestones, you can tell people what is coming, what is changing now, and what support exists. You can also collect feedback at each stage to refine the next stage, which is especially important in organizations with diverse workflows. Milestones therefore support both execution and socialization because they provide a rhythm that people can follow. Beginners should see this as building a predictable change process that reduces anxiety. When people trust the rhythm, they are more willing to participate because they can plan around it and ask questions before problems occur. This predictability is part of what makes security feel like a professional program rather than a series of urgent interruptions. Reviews are the third anchor because they create the feedback loop that keeps execution aligned to reality. A review is not a ceremonial meeting where people restate what they already know. It is a decision point where you evaluate evidence and choose whether to continue, adjust, or change direction. Reviews should examine whether milestones are being met, whether outcomes are improving, and whether the initiative is creating unexpected friction or risk. They should also examine whether ownership is working, such as whether decisions are being made quickly and consistently, or whether responsibilities are unclear. Reviews are especially important because the environment changes, and an initiative that made sense at planning time might need adjustment when systems evolve or priorities shift. Beginners should understand that pivoting based on review is not failure, it is maturity. A program that refuses to adjust will waste effort and lose credibility. Reviews make the program adaptive, and adaptation is a core security strength. To make reviews useful, you need to decide what evidence will be used and how it will be interpreted, because reviews based on feelings tend to become debates. Evidence might include outcome-based metrics like recovery performance, time to triage incidents, access review completion quality, or reduction in repeated policy issues. It might include operational signals like the volume of exceptions, the number of support requests, and patterns of confusion. It might include audit results and incident lessons learned. The key is choosing a small set of signals that reflect the initiative's purpose and are collected consistently. Reviews should also consider the human experience, because if an initiative is technically effective but operationally painful, adoption may degrade over time, creating risk. Beginners should learn that evidence is not only numbers. It includes consistent observations about how work flows. When reviews use evidence thoughtfully, they become problem-solving sessions rather than blame sessions. Operationalizing strategy also requires turning initiatives into manageable work streams that have clear boundaries and coordination points. Many security initiatives cross multiple teams, such as identity governance involving human resources and IT, or recovery readiness involving infrastructure and business owners. Without coordination, each team may do its part differently, creating inconsistency and delay. Work streams provide structure by defining what each group is responsible for and how they communicate. Coordination points can include regular check-ins, shared status updates, and agreed definitions so everyone uses the same language. This prevents the common situation where one team believes a milestone is complete while another team believes it never started. For beginners, coordination might sound like bureaucracy, but in security programs it often reduces bureaucracy because it prevents repeated rework and repeated clarifications. When coordination is lightweight but consistent, work moves faster because people trust that dependencies will be handled predictably. That trust reduces friction and makes initiatives easier to sustain. Another key element is managing scope and change control so strategy does not expand into an unbounded set of tasks. Scope creep is a common threat because as you begin executing, you discover related issues and additional needs. Some of these discoveries are important and should be addressed, but if you constantly add them without deliberate prioritization, the initiative becomes endless and progress disappears. Operationalizing strategy means defining what is included now, what is explicitly deferred, and what criteria would cause deferred items to become urgent. Reviews are where you can adjust scope deliberately based on evidence and risk. Owners play a role by protecting the initiative from uncontrolled expansion while still capturing useful lessons. Milestones help by keeping the focus on achievable outcomes. Beginners should learn that controlling scope is not ignoring problems. It is sequencing them so the program can deliver stable improvements rather than scattered activity. A program that cannot control scope often burns out teams and produces little measurable progress. Operationalization also includes documentation and shared reference points, but only to the extent that documentation supports behavior and consistency. Documentation is valuable when it makes processes repeatable, clarifies roles, and reduces dependence on individual memory. It should be written in plain language and updated when processes change, because stale documentation creates confusion and risk. However, documentation should not become the only deliverable, because a thick binder of procedures does not prove a capability exists. This is why milestones should focus on operational outcomes, such as completing a real restore test or completing a real access review cycle. Documentation supports those outcomes by making them repeatable. Beginners should understand that documentation is a tool, not a goal. The goal is consistent execution, and documentation is useful when it helps people execute consistently under pressure. When documentation is integrated into operational workflows, it becomes part of the program's stability. Operationalizing strategy into action also requires a clear escalation path for blockers, because every initiative will encounter obstacles such as resource conflicts, competing priorities, or technical limitations. If blockers have no path to resolution, work stalls, and stalled work quickly becomes forgotten work. Owners should be empowered to escalate issues to the right level, and the program should have a habit of addressing blockers in reviews rather than letting them linger. Blockers should also be categorized so you can see whether the program is being slowed by recurring issues like unclear priorities, insufficient staffing, or inconsistent leadership support. This information can feed back into budgeting and sequencing decisions. For beginners, it is useful to see that escalation is not complaining. It is a governance mechanism that keeps the program moving. A mature program expects blockers and plans for them, because change always creates friction. When escalation is normal and respectful, it prevents hidden frustration and reduces the temptation to bypass processes. To keep operationalization sustainable, you also need a rhythm that balances progress with stability. If reviews are too frequent and too heavy, they become administrative burden. If reviews are too rare, problems persist too long and momentum is lost. If milestones are too small, the program feels busy but not impactful. If milestones are too large, the program feels slow and discouraging. The right rhythm depends on culture and constraints, but the principle is to create predictable cycles where work is planned, executed, reviewed, and adjusted. This rhythm should also include celebration of meaningful progress in a calm way, not for hype, but to reinforce that effort leads to outcomes. Reinforcement matters because people sustain effort when they see results and feel that the work is valued. Beginners should see rhythm as part of program design, because programs are social systems. A well-designed rhythm keeps attention focused without exhausting people. Operationalizing strategy into action with owners, milestones, and reviews is how security programs become real, measurable, and resilient over time. Owners provide accountability and clear decision rights, so work does not dissolve into shared responsibility with no action. Milestones break large goals into achievable outcomes, create momentum, and provide natural points for communication and feedback. Reviews create the learning loop that keeps execution aligned to reality, enabling pivots and protecting credibility. Together, these anchors turn strategy from a document into a managed process that the organization can follow and sustain. For beginners, the central lesson is that governance is not only about deciding what should be true. It is about building the machinery that makes it true consistently. When that machinery exists, security improvements stop depending on heroics and start depending on routine. Routine is what makes security durable, and durability is what protects the mission when pressure arrives.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit BareMetalCyber.com.